I followed pretty much your whole career, AJ, from the time you signed with Penn State to your playing days at Penn State and on into the NFL. And then after that, now you're into bodybuilding, which is kind of how we connected
Yeah.
because I do that too. So I don't do physique. That's what you do.
Mhm.
I just do mainly bodybuilding. But
Okay.
yeah, man, your time at Penn State, you were a lot of fun to watch. You were fast, like real
Yeah.
fast. A lot of people put you and Justin King kind of into that same realm in the sense that you guys were both pretty similar
Mhm.
players. And to me, man, like that '05 class, uh, Derek Williams, Justin King, Dion Butler, Jordan Norwood. That was one of the biggest classes we ever had at Penn State, and uh, put Penn State back on the map really, because they had those down years, and then you
Mhm.
signed in 2006, and to me, you're right in there with all those guys in the sense that you came to Penn State when you could have gone pretty much anywhere. You were recruited by everybody.
Mhm.
Um, so as a fan, man, diehard fan, thank you for what you did for Penn State and what you did at Penn State because that means a lot to the fans especially. So um, thank you for being like a pioneer,
Mhm.
getting us back on the map because we're still there, man. That class
Yeah.
pretty much it hasn't stopped since. So thank you for being one of those guys.
Not a problem. I appreciate that too.
Yeah. So first and foremost, why did you pick Penn State over other schools? You were recruited by Florida State, Miami, Ohio State too, right?
hmm It came down to uh, the night before signing day. Really, I initially committed to him at the U.S. All American game, but there was still thoughts on my mind to see what was going on, and just being young, you watch bowl games because that All American game like sets like around bowl games. So I
Yeah.
remember after actually I was at that All American game and it was Penn State versus Florida State. And in my head I was like, all right, well whoever wins this game, that's where I'm going. And Penn State had actually won that game. I was like, oh, well, I guess I'm going there. You know what I mean? So it was just that, and then ultimately Coach Johnson and Coach Norwood really played a pivotal role in that. Just the way that they treated me. Coach Johnson actually coached at my high school that I went to, so that kind of played a role. As he knew the ins and outs of that area, and like I said, Coach Norwood he played a big role as well. Just the kind of person he is, kind of man that he was. Just honest people. I feel, in my opinion, that they were with me. You know what I mean? You go to these other programs. I'm not saying they didn't say it to anybody else, but you go to these other programs. Oh yeah, we put you right in. You know what I mean? You'll be this guy. You'll be this guy, and I'm just like, I know I have to work for something. It's not going to come that easy. So you just kind of had to find your way through the smoke or the fog or whatever, and then realize what you feel is the best fit for you at the time.
Yeah, I do remember that, man. Because you played Tim Tebow was on your team,
hmm
Percy Harvin.
Yeah.
There was a lot of big names in that game,
hmm
and there's been a lot of big names in that game in the past, like Reggie Bush, and I mean
hmm
everybody was in that game. Brady Quinn.
Yeah.
So to see you in that was cool. And then you and Maurice Evans both committed together.
hmm
I remember your parents were retired Army, so that is, that was a big deal. I was like not to age both of us, but I was like 13 when that happened.
Wow.
And I
Okay.
remember that, man. It was a big deal because, like I said, there was the down years there in the early 2000s, and then that '05 class, '06 class, you guys, because that was Chris Bell and Jared Odrick too were in that class.
hmm
So that was to keep that going was awesome. Um, and it's funny to hear you say about the bowl game because we almost lost.
hmm
It was like three overtimes or something like that. I was up
Yeah.
late, um, but we pulled it out. So
Yeah.
when you got to Penn State, so you say Coach Johnson, is that Larry Johnson you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay,
Larry
yeah, that's
Johnson.
what I thought. So I went to Penn State football camp for like 8 years, so I had all those guys too, and they were great. So when you got to Penn State, I mean, you played pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like when you got there? I mean, what was it like as a freshman?
When I first got there, it was kind of just a little buzz because I knew Justin kind of, and I guess the word got out like, oh, he's supposed to be doing what I was doing. So he was going to go full time defense, and I was going to be that back and forth offense defensive player. So that was the real pitch that they had when they was recruiting me. So they actually came through on that, and I remember it was maybe 2 weeks into camp, and I pulled my hamstring, and I felt like my world was collapsing. And so it was just kind of hard just getting my head straight and getting on back the track with that, but just also realizing the different type of football that was being played. You know what I mean? It's big fellas out there. Those hits feel a lot different than when you was back in high school. And the people you sometimes could run away from a breaking angle, you kind of have to do something a little extra to do that. You know what I mean? So everything just played a role. You had to be on top of your sleep. You had to be on top of your meals. You had to be on top basically of your game and film study. I mean, that played a big role. Film study in high school, I was like, what is that? Like when I watched film, it looked like I was just watching my highlights. So like I really never paid attention. So being in that film room and having to study and learn everything, it was definitely a different, what's lack of better words, adjustment. So just taking all that in, and then, like I said, being 18 on your own, just having the freedom. So you just gotta have to mesh all that together. But freshman year was definitely it was an exciting experience, especially that first time on the field. I'll never forget it.
There was a lot of competition there. Um, you and Lydell Sargent, you guys
Yeah.
were really battling it out pretty much your whole career.
Hmm.
Uh, and I remember all those guys, man. Lydell Sargent, Knowledge Timmons,
Yeah.
Elmore Phillips, Chaz Powell, Nick Suke, all those guys,
Hmm.
Scarrato. Um, so you had a really good secondary when you were there, and you had a lot of competition. So that's interesting. I remember pretty much all of your big plays too. Youngstown State, that touchdown you
Hmm.
had. The one that stands out to me as a fan was your kick return against Notre Dame at home,
Hmm.
in the first whiteout, because it was the second half, and we just came out guns a blazing. You
Yeah.
took it down to like their 40, I think Notre Dame's 40. You took it way
Yeah.
back. And for you to not get past the 50 on a kick return was pretty uncommon. So for you to
Right.
at least make the 50, that was like your standard pretty much.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
always took it back. So um, do you remember like your favorite play for Penn State? I mean, you had a lot of good ones, but
Um, yeah, it was probably when I had the ball in my hands, really. It was either, I mean, the Notre Dame one you speak of, or just the Ohio State one, because it was just so much there. You know what I mean? Because I honestly had a lot of time invested with Ohio State in their program as far as recruiting wise, too. So that was everything. So when that happened, I actually talked to Tressel after the game, but yeah, that was probably my most memorable one, just being that. But I remember the Notre Dame one. I remember when I broke free, I was like, okay, I'm gonna make this. But I knew I had a hip flexor. So while I was running, I could see it on film, like my leg was kind of like dragging. I was trying to get back up, and excuse me. And then out of nowhere, here comes Golden Tate, and he trips me up. That's the guy that tackled me. I was just like, you gotta be kidding me. So although I was excited, I was like, man, I should have took this to the house because Derek, I believe he had a punt return in the first half.
yep.
So I always tried to match that. I was like, okay, I need to set the tone and set a spark. You know what I mean? Get us rolling.
Yeah, it was you and Rodney Kinlaw back on that play.
Hmm.
And then yeah, that was the game that Derek Williams took back the punt. Uh, and another reason why that stood out to me is because that was the first full stadium whiteout,
Mm-hmm.
and after halftime, you solely got them back into it. If that's even a thing for Penn State fans, because they were already in it, but that just really fired them back up.
Mm-hmm.
Being that we're going to get into your bodybuilding and stuff like that, but being that you're into that now, the lifting program at Penn State, I had some insider information as one of my coaches helped there at one point and everything. What did you think about the lifting program? It was kind of it was a little different back then. You guys did a
Yeah.
lot of reps till failure, a lot of machines.
Mm-hmm.
Can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so when I got there, I expected something totally different than what the program was. They always like, man, you better watch out for JT. Just make sure you don't get JT taken through your workout. I was like, why? And so he took me to that workout. They had this one thing they did with like a neck exercise. I feel like it'll put you out, and like the rest of the workout, like it feels like you're dizzy. You know what I mean? Because you're laying on the end of a bench, and then you just holding you. You gotta bring your neck. Yeah, it was the worst. So that was probably the worst feeling I had. But other than that, it was more so I felt like we did one of everything. So I wasn't used to that. So it was like we go to this machine, put this weight on to see if you can get 8 or 10 reps. And it's like failure on each exercise. And then you just move on. Then they had like the real for the bench that's like the bars were like thick like this.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was I don't even remember benching too much while I was there. So but the that was as far as the weight program. The conditioning stuff was conditioning really. You run. There's only so much you can kind of do at this point, you know what I mean, as far as teaching speed and everything, but just get people conditioned. But the weight program definitely it was a little different. And then looking back on it, you kind of wonder what teams were doing because they would look different than what we would. You know what I mean? We were just kind of like big solid guys, and
Mm-hmm.
some teams come in there looking like they do bodybuilding. You know what I mean? So I was like, well, what are we doing? Especially when we played USC, I was just like, yo, there's something in the water in Cali because they look different. But yeah.
Yeah, you guys basically were bodybuilders. I mean, that's what you were doing,
Hmm.
because that's pretty much what bodybuilders do. Heavy reps till failure. And it's you guys didn't do a lot of free weights.
Hmm.
I know you did some dumbbells and some incline bench and stuff like that, but it was mainly machines.
Hmm.
And yeah, you talk about the Rose Bowl, USC.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that was yeah, that game. You really saw. You guys. I thought you guys you lost by 2 touchdowns. I thought you guys did fine. I mean, they just got out to a quick lead. Um,
Hmm.
Mark Sanchez was on fire that year.
Yeah. He had a
But
hot hand.
yeah, but I do think that USC was the best team in the country that year, and if you guys played, I think it's Oklahoma or Florida, I think you would have had a better shot.
Hmm.
USC was just so good; they were stacked. But
Hmm.
it's interesting that now. Do you think that if you guys were doing something a little different, it might have correlated better to the field? Is that what you mean, or?
Uh, I don't even know if that's the aspect of it because the guys that I was surrounded by were strong. So whatever they were looking for to do, I think they accomplished it. I think they were more worried about the strength part of it. But I noticed like with our weightlifting, I know it was mandatory to stretch before you get a shake. And like I said, we didn't do any squats. We didn't do any power cleans. So I feel like those things help with explosion. So some things that has been taken out could have been inserted, you know what I mean, to make the program better than, not saying it wasn't good, but to make it better. But I mean, that was their style. It was working for them. So that's what they had stuck with while I was there. I'm not sure what they do now, but I seen the facility when they remodeled it through online stuff, and then it's like, oh, okay.
Yep,
They're handling the business in there. So yeah.
it's all free weights now. It's all the
Yeah.
individual racks. Um, Bill O'Brien kind of started that whole thing, and then on to Franklin's tenure. But I agree with you, man, 100%. We've talked about that on this podcast several times about like incorporating more Olympic lifts, um, which I'm sure you do now. But
Mhm.
yeah, man, I'm sure that really set the foundation for you and what you're doing now.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's I had Chip Harrison. I was a trainer while I was at Penn State.
Nice.
Took a class, passed it, and everything. And then I was a trainer for 10 years after college.
Mm.
So pretty much seen it all. I've been in the new weight room twice now. It's very nice. I would love to work out in there. But
Mm.
yeah, it's they got a good setup now. So
Mhm.
particularly '09 AJ, that's really when you cracked into the starting lineup,
Mhm.
and you were number one. Um, now, did you? I've always wondered this. Did you take number one because of Justin King, like to kind of
Mm.
take that number one into the next season, or?
No, actually, I wanted number 5, really. Um, so when I got there, Jerome Hayes had it, and he just wasn't letting it go. And so we was cool and made jokes about it. So I made number 12 work because I really honestly wanted a single digit. And then once that opened up, I think it was between like 1 and 4, and I honestly was thinking about 4 because I was a big Devin Hester fan. And so I was like, nah, I just go and take number 1. And so when I did that, and that's basically where it came from. So it wasn't like I'm passing the reins down to you or anything type situation. I was looking for a single digit, really.
You just wanted a single digit. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, back then, did they have the same number on both sides of the ball?
Well, not for me because, I, excuse me, as much as they didn't use it, I still had plays that I would do on offense and then special teams wise. So they really couldn't carry that number, but they doubled up some numbers. But
True.
if you were conflicting with a special teams or something like that, they just made sure that person only had it.
Yeah. Graham Zug was number five on the offense. I know that.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's interesting. Okay.
He had some
Now,
hands too.
what's that?
Graham Zell had some hands. Like
You
I
know,
didn't feel like he dropped anything in practice. It was nice.
yeah. So Mike McQuarrie was one of my coaches at Penn State football camp. I really liked him a lot. He told me Graham Zug in particular, he was so good at route running. That's why he played so much. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm pretty sure he was a walk on. So he that's why he was that's why he played so much amongst all those great receivers. I mean, there's a
Hmm.
lot of good receivers there because he was so good at route running. So he was one of the guys I watched too. But getting into the NFL
Hmm.
and your professional career, AJ, you went to the Dolphins. You were teammates with Jared Aldrick.
Hmm.
What was that? What was that like? Another adjustment, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was a whole new world, especially Miami too. But I think at the time Miami was, mm, I don't know if they were like 500 or below 500. So the city was more so Hurricane fans. But as a Dolphin, they're like, oh my goodness, you're in the NFL. But just the world around it, and then seeing the things that Jared had to go through as far as meetings, media, and all that stuff. So I was like, it's a different level of commitment you have here. And then it was honestly just straight like business. So rest his soul, Vontae Davis, he was from the area I was from. And he had kind of helped me in with everything, and especially us being in the same DB room. And then Sean Smith, the other DB, I think he was drafted in the second round. And from Utah State. And those guys really helped me with everything as far as if I needed anything extra or whatever that was. And Of course, Todd Bowles, he was there. So he was, as a DB coach, like I go in there, because my DB coach, Scrap, we was doing drills. And Scrap, I'm just going to say, like, he don't have an arm. You know what I mean? But when I went through DB drills and Todd Bowles threw that, oh my goodness, it like flew right through my hands. I was like, what in the world? Like, I'm thinking, like, everything is like 100 times 100. Like, it was just like, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. So just with that, it was adjustment, and it opened my eyes to a lot.
Well, I had Kermit Bugs at camp too, and
Oh
you
yeah.
guys used the little footballs
hmm
at Penn State. Did you do that at Miami too in practice?
Nah, they just used in league football, and he would rifle it. He didn't need no machine. He was just, and so that was actually the first time my hands hurt leaving practice. Like it was
Really?
sore, like literally sore. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Um, well, yeah, that would be yeah, that'd be tough. In terms of because I think you guys were the only two Penn Staters on that team at that time. Um, in terms of like you and Jared, Jared was a first round pick,
hmm
and then you were undrafted. Like, what kind of did you guys have a rapport there when you went to the NFL
Yeah. I
at
mean,
all?
I hung out with Jared like when we was in college and stuff, and we both all like had our different groups of friends there, but we kind of meshed with football in some other spaces. But when we got there, Jared definitely helped me with some things, and as a first round draft pick, he hears things that what I'm saying, somebody maybe like me wouldn't hear. So he would tell me, like, hey man, just keep pushing it. You're doing good. Blah blah blah. Just little stuff like that. Wouldn't get too much into detail, but enough for me to read between the lines. Like, okay, I'm doing the right direction, even if I feel like I'm not doing something right. So it was just stuff like that. And then, like I said, he was just busy all the time. So I really gave people their space. I wasn't really trying to be up under him just because it was the first round draft. I just knew him as Jared. We came in class together at Penn State, so it wasn't really.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I remember he grew the long hair. He didn't
Yeah.
have that at Penn State, but he really grew it out in the NFL. Um, now talk about where you went after the NFL. You went you went to the Arena League, I
Yeah,
believe it
I
was
actually went to CFL, excuse
CFL. Okay,
me, with the Calgary Stampeders, and then that whole process to get there was just different. You know what I mean? And certain things didn't work out there, and then ultimately ended up in the Arena League, playing for Milwaukee and what was it? What was
Colorado.
Milwaukee Mustangs? Oh yeah, Colorado, and spent a little time in Cleveland with the Gladiators. But it was just that surface that I guess my body just couldn't get used to it. I remember I fractured my ankle while playing out there, and it was just one thing after another. When I would get back to something else, I feel like I broke one of my fingers. And it was just always something. So the mental game I was really fighting. I'm just you kind of feel like, okay, am I doing this like the right thing, or is this like a sign like, yo, you need to find another direction? You know what I mean? So ultimately, I just was like, I'm just gonna put this thing down and figure out what's next.
Now, before you went to Penn State, AJ, did you guys lift in high school? Did you guys lift much?
Yeah, we had a weight program, but it wasn't too concrete. We had a sheet. We just followed it. We went around the gym. We had a gym partner and do that.
Yeah,
So then basically, I think like the excitement really came from was when it was time to max and everybody get your name on the board who has the most reps in the bench or who maxed out the most in the bench. I was never a bench guy. You know what I mean? I hated bench. But then they do like leg press and squat, stuff like that. So I mean, that was pretty much it. But it wasn't like you have to do this, have to do this, have to do this. I kind of picked and choose what I did just because of, I guess, my on field performance allowed me to do that.
I remember Richard Gardner, for example, he said when he came to Penn State, they did a little piece on the weight room and stuff, JT, and he said he never lifted weights, and then when he came to Penn State, he said we got to lift weights here. This is crazy. So I'm sure that was a shocker for a lot of players going from high school to college, because that's pretty much a lot of high schools where you don't really lift too seriously. I'm sure some of the high schools in Texas do, because that's kind of like a college at a lot of those schools. But